and turn it over to Noah, if you don't mind. I want to share, obviously, you guys know our mantra here: all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. We're going to start off with, I'm going to have Noah, if you don't mind, going through the roster, just checking if everyone's with us today. That would be great.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Megan Berger. Sean Fulton.
I'm here.
Katie Stafford Cunningham.
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning. Karen Brummett.
Good morning, Karen. I'm here.
Kate Barra.
I'm here. Thank you.
Kim Dotson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Bidda DeWeese.
Sorry, good morning. I'm here.
Kelly Hartman.
Hey guys, I'm here.
Melissa Keys. Amy Griffin.
I'm Carrie Lee. I'm here in place of Amy Griffin today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Derek Nord.
Hi, I'm here.
Lisa Paddock.
Good morning. I'm here, Lisa Paddock.
Loretta Springer.
I'm here, Loretta Springer.
Kelly Mitchell.
Good morning. Kelly Mitchell here with DDRS.
Kathy Robinson. Jessica Harlan York.
Here.
Kyle Ingram.
Here.
Katie Schwips.
Here.
Matt Rodway.
Hello.
Holly Wimsatt.
Here. Hello, everyone.
Teresa Colzar.
Here. Good morning.
Christina Commons.
Good morning, everyone. Here.
And Ashton Lale.
Good morning. This is Brian Gilbert. I'm here for Ashton Lale.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Noah. Okay,
Absolutely.
I'm going to start us off with a video from, as we always do, from Open Futures Learning. This is Sarah Gordy. She is a British actress, and she just talks a little bit about having Down syndrome and being an actress, and just how that experience has been for her. So I'm going to stop, hopefully, this audio. Someone give me a thumbs up once I start this to let me know that you can hear it.
I love playing different characters. Once I'm in a character, Sarah Gordy goes. And when you're not in a character, you go back to being Sarah Gordy. Well, it's not about Down syndrome, it's about the person behind it. I'm a woman and an actor first, and there's more to me than meets the eye. Any characters I play, first thing I do my research and do my homework. When I did Upstairs, Downstairs and Call the Midwife, I always researched on how people treated people with Down syndrome in those times, and it was very negative. I'm out there breaking barriers, changing people's attitudes towards people like us. Okay, we're different, but we're still human beings, trying to live a normal life, and having jobs is the starting point of getting a normal life for people with learning disabilities.
Thanks, guys. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? It's a short one, but I haven't watched, I've heard of her, but I haven't watched any of her movies. So it's like, I got to check some of them out. So just wanted to share that to start us off. Okay, I am going to turn it over back to the PowerPoint here. Okay, I am going to turn it over to Kelly Mitchell to get us started with an update on the Medicaid forecast and FSSA's HCBS waiver update.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for sharing that video as well. I found that quite inspiring. It was short, but I think very much to the point. So good morning, everyone. It's hard to believe another month has rolled around and spring is quickly approaching. March is just around the corner. Today, we're going to be providing another update for you on our Medicaid strategies and our Family and Social Services Administration home and community-based services waivers. We continue, I love to stress this every time I present, we continue to value and need your partnership and your collaboration to effectively implement our strategies and core initiatives that are inclusive of, but they're not limited to those that we're going to be reviewing in this update. So I would just like for us to be mindful of that as a council. I'd also like to recognize that joining us today is Cora Steinmetz, who is the Director of the Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning. Cora, if you would like to say hello and introduce yourself.
Good morning. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for inviting me to today's meeting. Really happy to be here with all of you. If we haven't had a chance to meet, it's great to meet you. I have been in this role since August of last year, and I've just really enjoyed getting to work more closely with our DDRS and our Division of Aging teams and learning more about this space because it's new to me. Previously, I was Governor Holcomb's Health Policy Director and had a chance to work closely with Kelly and others in the agency before that. So great to be with you. Thank you.
And Cora, thank you for being with me today. While I'll be leading the bulk of the presentation, Cora may jump in for clarification purposes. I just want to add too, while our time working together has been short, it's been a great pleasure, and I certainly admire the passion and the skill set that Cora brings to the position. So very excited to have you by my side today, virtually. So today, let's just look briefly at our agenda. I want to be cognizant of the time frame. We're going to briefly revisit the December Medicaid forecast as we presented on that before, provide an overview of the drivers of the variance, again, just very briefly, mainly focus on providing some clarifications based on feedback that we've received, and then provide an update on where we're at as far as waiver amendments and our ongoing efforts with waiver redesign. We do have quite a bit to cover, so I would just ask if you could hold your questions to the end of the presentation. We'll be happy to take those and answer at that time. Jessica, you can move to the next slide, please. So again, I think that most of you have seen these. I presented this previously during January's presentation, but just again, wanted to highlight that our December forecast revealed a significant variance from the prior forecast in April, about $900 million. And that was due to several drivers that were identified during a very deliberate and intense, if you will, deep dive by our Family and Social Services Administration team. Some of those items, those drivers, are things that are somewhat beyond our control, or are beyond our control. That being an anticipated decrease in our federal FMAP, that is the percentage of Medicaid match that we receive from the federal government. It's a small dip in that match, but as you can imagine, with a large program such as Medicaid, a small percentage decrease can have a significant impact. There was also some matters with pharmacy rebates. They ended up being higher than anticipated. While that impacted our projection in a not favorable light, that indicated some good news for our consumers because pricing on some drugs such as those to control diabetes and insulin have been driven down. So that was good for the end consumer. And then there was also a Medicare Part D clawback. As a state, and Cora is much more skilled on this, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but during the reconciliation, if you will, the state has to buy into Medicare, and our cost was more than what we had projected. So again, that impacted that variance. Things that were somewhat within our control was the delayed implementation of our rates for applied behavioral analysis or ABA therapy. We had anticipated the implementation of those rates October the 1st, and that did not occur until the 1st of January again. So that contributed to the variance. But one of the most significant drivers of that variance was an unanticipated growth in the enrollment and utilization of our home and community-based services waivers, but particularly within the aged and disabled waiver. And more specifically in granularity within the enrollment and utilization of attendant care services. Most importantly, and as we've discussed before, there was a significant increase in enrollment and utilization of children or those under the age of 18. I think I've noted before, we had anticipated growth in enrollment and utilization among the aging population based on demographics, but that significant growth in that pediatric population was not anticipated. So if we could move on, please, Jessica. Again, just to provide a little context, and this has been shared previously, but just to provide a little more clarity as we talk about the increase in enrollment and utilization in attendant care services. That is displayed here in a visual in two side-by-side graphics. On the left, you can see the growth in attendant care expenditures and enrollment across all ages. And that starts back, those graphs may be hard to see, back in 2020. And then on the right, you can see that growth in expenditures and enrollment as it relates to children or those under the age of 18. I think you can note there's a significant difference between the first month, looking at that graph, when it's around $20 million in expenditures per month, and the last month when that's around $120 million. I'll again just emphasize that while we see a very specific and substantive trend that's relative to the pediatric population, I do want to note that it's not the only driver responsible for this increased utilization. And as I indicated when I was reviewing the drivers on the previous slide, it's more about that there was an unexpected and unanticipated growth in that pediatric population versus the aging population. So Jessica, if you could. Again, we've shared before that we really had two buckets, if you will, of strategies to address the variance in the forecast. And I do want to highlight or stress for you that these strategies are Medicaid strategies to ensure the sustainability and the efficacy of the Medicaid program. As this is the DDRS Advisory Council, and our division and our service delivery structure is focused on individuals with disabilities and particularly home and community-based services, we're providing a more in-depth focus on the strategies that are impacting our waiver members. I think it's also important to note that the strategies are related to the Medicaid forecast and the sustainability of that Medicaid program. They're not the result of pathways implementation or transition of waivers to the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services and or the Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning. So I think at times I even struggle with, it's hard to keep sight when we're lasered in on home and community-based waivers or attendant care, that there's a larger array and strategies that focus on the Medicaid program as a whole. I do also want to remind individuals that while the strategies that we will review within both groups have been identified, right now the projected impact does not fully represent the variance or the projected shortfall. So again, we have two really kind of categories or buckets of strategies. The first is, how do we minimize the impact of the dollars that have already been spent? Because we know our fiscal year starts July 1. We are now February, nearly March. When this variance was identified, we were in December. So how might we mitigate the impact of that variance, those dollars that have already been spent? So one of the things that we looked at and we were successful at is that we had some funds that were made available to us by the federal government during the public health emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And they were additional dollars that we could use to enhance home and community-based service delivery. So above and beyond what we would typically do. And we had multiple projects throughout the administration. I think some of you are very familiar with those. There were sustainability grants to pass through dollars to direct service workers. There were grants focused on childcare. There were initiatives within mental health. We still had some projects where dollars had not been expended yet, or we had identified underutilization of those funds. So in looking at that, we were able to reallocate some of those funds to address some of the shortfall. The other piece that we were using to minimize the impact of the drivers was to place a pause on the 2% rate indexing that was identified last year as part of our rate methodology work when that significant increase in reimbursement rates was passed in July of 23. We highlight that it's a pause within the amendments. Should our environment change, should the fiscal outlook change, we do have the ability to implement that 2% rate indexing, again, if our circumstances allow. So Jessica, if we could, let's just move on to the next slide. So this will be the bulk of our focus today. And again, I just want to note that I'm highlighting, and what we're highlighting today as a team, Cora and I, is really the focus on our home and community-based services waivers. So some of the key strategies to address that forecasted variance within the waiver, first of all, is a review of service plans and a reduction of auto approval. So right now, internal processes, many of the plans as they come up to the state are auto approved. So we will be putting policies and procedures in place. In fact, we are working fast and furiously behind the scenes to get that in place, where we have a core team here in central office that will review plans based on certain identified parameters. That's to ensure that we're appropriately addressing the needs of members and that we are person-centered in our approach and that we are compliant with waivers and service definitions. So that leads me into that second item that is bolded. We also want to better ensure service definition compliance. Obviously, that relates to attendant care, but we are looking across the board at all services to ensure that there is full understanding within our care management team and provider world and our members of what are the allowable activities within a service definition. Some of that is clarity that we will provide again today around attendant care. And again, Cora and her team and Kathy Robinson, who is with us, Associate Director here at DDRS, are looking at how we might ensure better policies and procedures around service definition compliance. That also relates to compliance to item number 3 and 2, compliance with our home and community-based waivers as they are written and approved by CMS, by the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services at the federal level. Our waivers, as they are currently written, the age and disabled waiver, the TBI waiver, do not have an allowance for legally responsible individuals to provide paid support, what CMS defines as personal care services, and what we identify as attendant care or ATTC. So part of our pathway, as we have been working with CMS regarding compliance and a strategy to address that, is to find a pathway for legally responsible individuals to continue to provide paid support to eligible members that are under the age of 18. And therefore, we are creating that avenue through structured family caregiving. And I know there's been a lot of attention and focus on that. And obviously that has been part of our amendment process. Another core piece to this is pediatric eligibility. I think most of us are aware that attendant care was designed primarily with an older population, a geriatric population in mind. Individuals must meet what we term as a nursing facility level of care in order to qualify for the aged and disabled waiver, and therefore have access to the services that are available within that. What we have found in our review is that the current tool that we utilize to assess eligibility isn't appropriate and doesn't accurately assess nursing facility level of care for a younger population, for a pediatric population. So we will continue at present stage to use the tool that we have, but do some intensive training with our care management team and internal team, and conducting some reviews as to how to use the tool as it applies to those under the age of 18. I usually try to provide an example here to give some clarity. There may be a question on this, on the assessment that, because we're talking about activities of daily living, and think again as really a support and service designed with older individuals in mind. Can the individual independently make a hamburger? I'm not saying that's in the assessment, but there would be an item similar to that. One would not anticipate that a 1-year-old could independently make a hamburger. So we want to ensure, as we're applying the assessment, that we're thinking about it in the context of developmental stages and appropriate levels of independence in determining that nursing facility level of care. So one of the other levers that we have put into play is that we anticipate there may be some individuals who are currently eligible who may, upon reassessment, not be found eligible. And we want to ensure that those members have access to service. So part of our process has been to create or propose a priority category under the family support waiver within DDRS to provide services and support for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So they would have to be eligible through that pathway to continue to receive home and community-based waiver services. We're also pausing our efforts around expedited waiver eligibility, and I don't go into a great level of detail on that. If you have questions later, Cora is the subject matter expert there. But we are putting a pause on that just to ensure that we can appropriately monitor and implement that expedited waiver eligibility and to allow us to place our focus on the matters at hand. Finally, I would like to also note that we did not increase the number of waiver slots available in our age and disabled waiver or TBI waiver. We recognize due to the increased enrollment that we may indeed have to implement a wait list. And that is due to how CMS advises us and requires us to account for the availability of those slots. We would anticipate that the wait list would be short term because July 1, and Cora, correct me if I'm wrong on that date, but I believe it's July 1, begins a new year, and we would anticipate additional slots being available on July 1. Because of this anticipated wait list, then we are working internally to ensure that we have appropriate policies, practices in place, and that we are compliant with language within our waiver as it relates to what I will term as kind of order of selection from that wait list to ensure that our priorities are appropriate and that we serve individuals according to our waivers as written. So we have been placing a lot of internal effort on that matter as well. And we would anticipate additional communication around that over the coming month. But I wanted to draw attention because as one would expect, there has been a lot of focus on legally responsible individuals and the provision of attendant care, a little tongue-tied there, but wanted to remind individuals that there are other strategies within waiver that we are addressing. Okay, Jessica, if you could move me to the next slide, I would very much appreciate it. So I wanted to take this opportunity to provide some clarity based on the feedback that we've been receiving. We've identified some opportunities where we could be a little more clear, if you will, regarding our proposed strategies. Of note, I would like to put forth that the waiver and the services offered will continue. We are not talking about discontinuing the waiver or eliminating any services that are offered through the waiver. What will happen is that the aged and disabled waiver will be separated into two waivers and renamed effective July 1 of 2024. I think most of you are aware that have been with us as a council that the health and wellness waiver is being created to support individuals who are 59 and under, who meet that nursing facility level of care that were eligible for the aged and disabled waiver. And we will also be creating the pathways, which is our managed care waiver for individuals who are 60 and older, who also meet nursing facility level of care. And that will be managed by the Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning. And the health and wellness waiver will be under the operational authority of the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services. I would also like to highlight once again that attendant care, or ATTC, you will often see that acronym, will remain a service. We are not proposing the elimination of attendant care as a service. Jessica, if you would, please. Thank you. Again, there have been a lot of questions around legally responsible individuals and the provision of attendant care and what the proposed strategies mean to legally responsible individuals who are providing paid support to members. First, I would also like to note here, as I reference compliance with CMS and waivers, or if Cora references that. What we are talking about is compliance with our CMS approved waiver as they are written, as they are approved by CMS. We must ensure compliance. So, a legally responsible individual, through the strategies that we are proposing, may continue to provide attendant care through June the 30th. So, if a legally responsible individual, which is the parent or guardian of a minor, an individual under the age of 18, or the spouse of a member, is currently providing paid services to a member through attendant care, they can continue to do so through June 30th. So we are not requiring an immediate end to that service delivery by the LRI. And we are encouraging our care managers and members and their families to work with the care manager to plan for the transition that will be effective July 1. Legally responsible individuals can continue to be compensated for services provided to a member through structured family caregiving July 1 and after. So again, we are not eliminating the ability of a legally responsible individual to provide paid services and support through the waiver. What we are doing is changing the service through which that paid service, paid support may be provided. So effective July 1, a legally responsible individual providing compensated services to a member would do that through structured family caregiving if that is their choice. The legally responsible individual compliance that we reference applies both to the aged and disabled waiver and the traumatic brain injury waiver. And we do like to stress, as I just mentioned, that members who currently receive attendant care by a paid LRI do have choices. They can continue to receive attendant care and have that provided by a non-legally responsible individual. So that can be another family member, a friend, a neighbor, a paid direct service provider. So that option continues to exist. Attendant care has not been removed as an available service. And if that is the path chosen, the legally responsible individual can continue to provide paid support through structured family caregiving. Jessica, if you'd move to the next slide, please. Trying to move through quickly.
Millie, I shared the link as well in the chat for folks.
There is a link now in your chat. You'll see a hyperlink up on the screen. I think Jess is going to try to share the page, but if it fails, we embedded it in the chat. I know we've had some questions around attendant care versus structured family caregiving, what it is and what it isn't. As I mentioned, this is available on our FSSA website, on our Medicaid strategies page. Encourage you all to visit that page. There's a wealth of resources and we're continuing to update that regularly. In fact, Jessica, I may have you place that link in the chat too, just to that home landing page rather than just to this document.
Yep, I can do that too. Just to give me a second.
And I can send it later if need be. So I just wanted to note, and I'm not going to read through all of this, you have it available for later reference, but both services are designed for the provider to support the member with activities of daily living. So they're comparable in that matter. Neither of the services includes the delivery of skilled care. The distinction would be that attendant care is paid hourly, and any legally responsible individual, or for that matter, anyone providing attendant care, would have to clock out when providing, say, medication administration support or any other skilled care for a trach or an ostomy or an open wound. I mean, there's a long list of what is skilled care, medical care. So in other words, to be compliant with the service definition of attendant care, an individual providing paid attendant care cannot deliver skilled care while on the clock as an attendant care provider. So that affords some challenges with compliance, but also kind of disrupts the natural rhythm, if you will, in a familial relationship, because there would be a lot of clocking in and out if you had an individual that had a higher level of skilled care need or complex medical need. Also, we have found, as we talk about service definition compliance, that there has just been a general misunderstanding regarding the use of attendant care to provide skilled care. Attendant care is not and cannot be a replacement for skilled care. Again, that is within service definition compliance, and that is not related to a legally responsible individual. Attendant care, regardless of who is providing it, cannot be used to provide skilled care through that service. The advantage for a member and a legally responsible individual under the structured family caregiving is that the rate is a per diem, and therefore there is no requirement for that clocking in and out throughout the day as it relates to whatever activities are going on. So let me just give you an example. If mom is handing her son Joe his medication, she doesn't have to clock out to do that under structured family caregiving because it's a per diem rate. It's per day providing that service and support. If that were under the attendant care model, actually handing medication to an individual is not allowed under attendant care. That would be considered medication administration, and the individual would have to clock out. So again, there's no requirement for that clocking in and out throughout the day. It's more resembles the natural family environment. One other item before I move on to the next slide is that we'd like to clarify that structured family caregiving providers do not have to be an employee of the provider agency to receive the per diem. They can be, but they don't have to be. That can be through a contractual arrangement. So we are going to update this document to provide some clarity around the matter, but that has not been completed to date. And we have noted through the feedback that there is some concern and confusion around that, and I wanted to share it with you today. I'm going to back up a little bit too, because I think I forgot to mention. Talking about the availability of structured family caregiving, we've also heard from providers, from advocacy organizations, from individuals, concerns around ensuring that there's adequate capacity and choice among providers for structured family caregiving. So we are working internally on an expedited enrollment process for providers interested in adding structured family caregiving to their current array of services. I would anticipate more information forthcoming again over the next month as we have an internal team that is heavily focused on that matter as well. So just wanted to share with you that we have heard you. We are cognizant of that, and we have been attentive to that particular area. Jess, if you'll move on.
Yeah, Kelly, I'm wondering, because I think you're transitioning just a little bit. Karen had a question, so I'm wondering if you're okay, maybe just answering this real quickly.
Sure.
And I did share the Medicaid strategy link as well.
Thank you. That's perfect.
In case you haven't seen it, just in case, it's right there and has some good information. Is there a plan for those children on the A&D waiver that will not meet NFLOC to be transitioned to family support waiver versus losing all services and supports? I can give you an example if you need.
No, yes, as I shared, and maybe this question came in right before I
You answered it almost right after I asked.
Sorry.
Okay, so Karen,
I'm like,
then
pay
I
attention,
think
but
I
I've
answered.
tried
It's a
this.
very good question.
Because
Sorry about
I
that.
think if you look at the time frame in which those numbers went up, and I think you guys look at it, there was a number of families during COVID that there was no staff, and they heard that, hey, over here you can do this. And so we saw a migration of families from the family support waiver over to the A&D waiver because that option was being allowed there. And so they made that migration over to the A&D waiver. And there are children who will not meet level of care for a nursing home. And I know that because I kept going, we're not the independent case management companies do not do level of care. They only can be done by the area agencies on aging. So they're the gatekeepers and they were meeting it. So our hands are tied. They come back on the waiver, another waiver, and they come back into services and for that sole purpose. So they were misguided by the system and the system allowed that to happen. And so I would hate for those kids then to lose all services and support.
Karen, I think that's a very good question. It's a very good point. And thank you for highlighting it. I think we too do not want that to happen. But to your point, we recognize that we may have individuals who, upon reassessment, once we get better alignment with the assessment tool for nursing facility level of care, who may be found not eligible for that level of care. Therefore, we are putting into play that priority category under family support waiver.
So did you say it is in play or you're going to work
That's
on
part of
putting
the proposed amendment. It has to be approved by CMS, obviously. But that's part of our proposed amendment.
Yeah, this is Kathy. I would just add, I think to clarify for people, we're not proposing to change the way in which the assessment tool is being administered.
Yes.
And we are not changing the assessment tool. I think what we're seeing is just inconsistency in application across entities who are doing that function and a need to retrain people for consistent application of the existing criteria is what we're looking to do.
Kathy, thank you. I think it was a great point to stress. Kate has a question.
And like just a heads up, we have about, I mean, you have a little bit of time, but just about 5 minutes. But let me know if you go over. That's okay. Just giving you a heads up.
Kate has a question. I think it relates to this. It says, will transitioning eligible children and youth to the family supports waiver in a priority category impact the children and youth already waiting for services? It is not our intent that the priority category would impact. It's not that it changes the target number per month. But in sheer transparency, I can't say that it may slow. If you think about staffing capacity and resources, it may slow our ability to target individuals and onboard them to the family and support waiver. But it's not part of the planned approach to reduce that target number based on that priority category. Kim?
Hi, guys. So thanks for this. Some of this has been really useful. Could you walk through a little bit more of how you guys determined to not allow attendant care under the waivers with a extraordinary care definition and some guidelines and made the choice to just move it to structured family caregiving? Because I think a lot of families know that other states do allow attendant care by LRIs on other waivers, and how you guys foresee that saving some money. Because you guys are still going to have to pay a third party to do attendant care if we can find the workers. Does that make sense the way I worded that?
It does. It's a good question, Kim. And thank you for asking. And I will try to answer that and hopefully in an understandable manner. As you indicate, CMS does allow for legally responsible individuals to provide what they term as personal care services. So I like to note that at the CMS level, it's personal care services. Attendant care is a personal care service. But when I've mentioned before that there are restrictions or requirements around that. So if a state does allow legally responsible individual to provide those personal care services, they must have an extraordinary care definition. So a manner in which to determine that, monitor that, right? Ensure equity and even application and enforcement of that allowance. So yes, indeed, we could have pursued that pathway. And there are states that have, and the state does set the definition, if you will, of extraordinary care. I think given our current environment, the fiscal environment, as it relates to that forecast and some of our projections, had we chosen to pursue allowing legally responsible individuals to provide attendant care under an extraordinary care definition, that definition would have been very narrow, and actually would have more greatly limited the ability of legally responsible individuals to provide any type of paid support. Again, in the context of our current fiscal environment. That is why we chose the avenue of structured family caregiving, really to allow a broader pathway for legally responsible individuals to continue to provide paid support for members. Did that answer the question? Or explain?
It does. I don't know if you can, like, that second part is, I get where you're going, right, with the financial forecast. I understand that well. But I guess, again, for a lot of people, right, you're going to spend that money if it was a third party, right? If we would have the guidelines and the definition and everything like that. So I think there's just some concern that there's not enough people out there to deliver the service first and foremost. Parents are willing to do this. It's not necessarily a first choice, but they're trying to, figure out that cost savings. If you guys are willing to pay a third party to do it, why couldn't an LRI do it with those guidelines in place?
Thank you for the feedback, Kim. Derek, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, and I apologize if I'm just seeking some clarification. And a couple slides back, you showed the projections. And I might have been reading into your language a little bit, but it sounded like you were suggesting that this may not be over. I'm wondering if you could just clarify or that are these projections, or should we expect more of this? And then as the future projections come out?
Kelly,
it may not be over.
That it sounded like the 900 million may not, and maybe I'm reading into what you were saying. So that's why I wanted clarification. It sounded like.
It's maybe what you're referring to is I talked about those strategies, the two buckets. I did make note that what we have identified now as strategies doesn't fully address the projected shortfall.
Thank you.
But I think to your point, and I was actually going to talk a little bit about this in the next slides as we talked about our home and community-based waiver transition. In that planned approach is that I would say it's not over, period. This is an iterative process. And I think we, Cora, the FSSA team, fully recognize and understand the concern and anxiety as we are putting forth and communicating these proposed strategies. It's completely understandable. But these strategies that we are proposing to implement now are really, like, I would say, phase one. We're going to continue to look at this and how do we, as we hear from you, as we hear from families, as we always have, continue to use that feedback to move forward as we think about waiver design and reset, and how do we better serve Hoosiers with disabilities, and how do we better support the needs. So I think I will speak for myself, but I think I could speak for others through this process. I think we all are gaining a better understanding of, children with complex medical needs, and what is it we do and don't need to do. And so this, while it has not been an easy journey for any of us, I think there has been much learned along the way. So it's not over in a lot of ways, Derek. I think not just as we think about, oh, what else can we do to save money, but it's how do we do this more efficiently and effectively to better support. So I would just remind everyone that this is an iterative process. It's not the end. July 1 is not the end.
And Kelly, this is Cora. Do you mind if I just add?
No, please do. I actually was going to say, Cora, I'm going to let you talk for a little
Yeah,
bit.
no,
I'm getting a dry throat.
I agree with everything that you've said. I would just add, in addition to thinking about our administration of the waiver, and to Kelly's great points about what we've learned about how best to support families through this process, we're also very excited about improvements that will be made as a result of the variance issues around forecast improvements and financial monitoring, not just of our expenditures, but really looking at, on a very regular basis, detailed utilization of these services and the story that it tells behind what array of services families are and waiver members, Medicaid members, and this is really throughout our program, our entire Medicaid program, not just the A&D waiver, not just our home and community-based services space, taking that really detailed look and marrying up the programmatic aspects of our Medicaid appropriation with the expenditures and the dollars and the forecasted amounts that we think we're going to spend. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and we have sort of work groups well underway here at the agency to really ensure that those processes are in place, and to Kelly's point, take the learnings of this situation and really apply it broadly throughout the entire Medicaid program. It's a really great opportunity for us to look at all of those pieces.
Carrie, I think you've been waiting patiently. Thank you.
Hi, I just have a couple of questions. One, you had mentioned parameters around service plans that would require a person review versus an auto review or an auto renewal. And so just wondering if you can provide some insight on what some of those parameters might be that would switch it from auto to a person review. And then my other question is more clarification coming around respite for those who are currently providing attendant care to their minor child and choose to do the structured family caregiving. I think there's a lot of concern about losing skilled respite services under the waiver and just receiving non-skilled 15 days. So if you can provide clarification on that, that would be great.
Those are good questions. On the first one, what I can share with you is that we're not yet ready to communicate what those parameters are. We have an internal work group. I think Cora just referred to multiple work groups. So we want to ensure that the parameters that we set in place are appropriate, right? That there's equity, that there's logic in the why. We also want it to be very manageable. So I would anticipate communication around that. Again, Cora, you don't know I'm looking at you, but I would, or Kathy, looking at both of you, I would, say in the coming month or so that there would be more information distributed around that to our care managers.
Yeah, I think that obviously is something that we've kind of signaled to people that we are pursuing as far as the auto approval logic and what elements get flagged for state team review. That's information that when we have that finalized, we'll be transparent about. We will share exactly kind of what we're looking at and why we're looking at it. I think foundationally, as we would with all of our HCBS services, we would want to ensure that some of those core tenets are being adhered to. And I would say, you know, being person-centered is something that DDRS has been particularly focused on over the course of the last several years. CMS has been pleased with DDRS's strategy for person-centered planning, but I would say that is some of those core areas that we would want to ensure teams are really being thoughtful about, because to Kelly's earlier point, at the end of the day, the individual is their voice in the service planning conversation is important. Yes, we recognize a lot of the folks that we're talking about today are pediatric individuals, but we're still looking at how to ensure that those services and supports are meeting those minimum, at least the minimum standard for good person-centered planning practices as a whole for the HGBS system. That's very core and foundational to the operation of the waivers, and it's actually very specific in terms of what actually needs to happen. And so I would definitely encourage people to remind themselves what that means, and look at what some of those criteria and expectations, minimum expectations from CMS would be in that area.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a great end. And then Carrie, to your second question, which I believe was about access to skilled respite. Jessica Harlan York, can you advance about 3 slides? It'll be the header public comment period, because yes, right there. I'm having that up because as I hope most of you know, our public comment period on the waivers that were posted, and those are listed on the slide deck on the screen in front of you, closed on the 16th of February. And as one might expect, we received quite a bit of public comment. So our team within FSSA is currently in the process of reviewing that. And then once that is, completed and we make any final adjustments to our waivers and proposed amendments, those will be submitted to CMS. The reason I reference that, Carrie, is that I'm very well aware that there was significant, I would say, comment around skilled respite, access to respite. So what I can say to you is that we will be looking at that matter, and then, communicating more on that later at a future point. Cora, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Or Kathy, I know you're leading some of our internal efforts on the public comment.
I would just say that we are excited about the opportunity to really help with alignment, especially as the pathways transition takes place with the A&D waiver, and ensuring that our Medicaid team that will be supporting the pathways waiver is closely aligned with the new health and wellness waiver. And so that is certainly something that you see throughout. We were certainly on that trajectory even before the forecast variance, but this has just really been an opportunity for us to renew our commitment and seeing the importance of a smooth transition for individuals who will age into the pathways waiver from health and wellness. So otherwise, totally agree with your comments and overview there, Kelly.
Okay.
I would also just ensure, I guess, to add to some of the questions that have come up around this, and hopefully this isn't news to people, but we also are obviously working very closely with AAAs and care managers on conducting specific outreach right now to individuals and families who are in a situation where they are an LRI providing services to their family member, and they are in that group of folks who need to transition. And those contacts from the care manager is intended to help families start having conversations about transition planning, thinking through all of the considerations that they may have in terms of those next steps. But it is also for an opportunity to inform the system to better understand the nature and situations that families are in and trying to navigate. And so I would just very much want to reiterate the fact that we are doing that, but also encourage families who are getting contacted by their care managers to fully engage in that conversation, because it really does help to initiate some of those conversations for us to also be able to know where are there gaps in understanding and communication that we could be assisting with, but also to inform us as a whole. While we've heard from a lot of families and their individual stories, this information would also provide a good baseline information to tell us what kind of respite services people are concerned about, or what kind of services and supports people are looking at, and what does a typical day look like for them. I think that's also helpful for us in understanding how the waiver is really intended to really meet the needs of where those gaps are as an HCBS program. So I would just very much recommend that people, if they're in that situation, to engage in that process. And care managers are under some scrutiny and compression and time frame wise to get that completed by mid-March. So if you've not been contacted yet by your care manager, families probably will be soon, in order to start having some of those preliminary conversations, knowing that there'll be some additional information coming out to help them in that planning process. But we're going to be very closely engaging with care managers, because they really are positioned to be the source of information to help people navigate, to get them walking through and walking down that path.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And Carrie, thank you for the questions. And Jessica, if you'll advance, I just want to note we still are on our timeline and target for a waiver effective date of July 1. Karen, Kate, I see a question from you in the chat, which is going to lead me, just go to the last part of the deck, Jess. I'm going to try to wrap it up here. Wait, there. Which is really just kind of lead me to the wrap up here. Your question is there a plan for engaging with individuals with IDD and their family members or caregivers to assist more effectively in coming up with solution-oriented recommendations for waiver services, gaps, and needs? The reason that I'd ask Jessica to advance the slide here, and Kate, you actually just kind of set me up perfectly for where I wanted to go and how I wanted to close this. I think I mentioned earlier in response to Derek that these strategies that we're talking about becoming effective July 1 are not the end. It's an iterative process. These are strategies, and we've talked about in the past. We really had a very short time frame to develop solutions to address that forecast variance while remaining focused on the members and the individuals we support, and ensuring that there are services available. But as we think about moving forward, we remain committed as an administration and particularly as a division, so as FSSA and as DDRS, to not only integrate the health and wellness and the TBI waiver, and to not only implement pathways, but to Cora's point and the points that Kathy have made, it's how do we better align services and create a system that fully and holistically supports individuals. So we're going to continue our efforts within DDRS and within FSSA around waiver redesign and particularly waiver reset. So phase one is we need to level set and ensure alignment and integrate the new waivers. But then how do we continue to move forward? I think all of you remember our path forward document, not to be confused with pathways. But we've been engaging with stakeholders over the past 7 years. I mean, through, our over 64 listening sessions, through the 1102 task force, through this DDRS advisory council, through our creating or building bridges sessions, and through various work groups where we are bringing stakeholders like you and so many others to the table. And how do we design an array of waiver services to better support Hoosiers as they age and Hoosiers with disabilities? So know that work hasn't stopped. We remain committed to engaging with our stakeholders, particularly when I say stakeholders, that's pretty broad. Individuals with lived experience and their families, and advocates, So yes, indeed, we are going to continue that work and continue to connect not only with you, but through various other resources as we move toward that vision of waiver reset. So thank you, actually, Kate, such a great question, and it gave me the opportunity to truly end this presentation on that note. I do want to be mindful of, we recognize that this is difficult. There was no easy answer to this. It's a difficult situation, one in which none of us would desire to be. And we have really worked to develop the best strategies and pathways in the context of the whole. But we recognize the questions, we recognize the concerns, we recognize the anxiety, we hear you. And as I said, we're knee deep right now as a team in reviewing that public comment and making sure we've read them all as they've come in, but making sure that we are giving the attention to that comment, those comments that have been made. So with that, I'm going to open it up if there's any other questions, or Cora, if you, in fact, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you add anything that you would like as we close out.
No, thank you, Kelly. I think that the information you shared was really helpful. I just appreciate you all continuing to share your feedback, as Kelly mentioned. Really critically important from the stakeholder perspective to continue to have the partnership, and as we work to implement the strategies. I think Kelly's statements were spot on when we talk about this. This is just the beginning. This isn't ending on July 1. We're really going to be ensuring that we have processes and procedures and policies in place that assist with obviously our fiscal situation, but also the programmatic aspects of this as well. So thank you for letting me join you today.
I'm the person that doesn't know how to raise my hand in that little thing. So this is my official hand. Can I ask one question? Just a consideration for structure. Hey, it worked. For the structured caregiving, have you considered putting in one more tier for the complex medical kids, like the ones that are truly complex, to add one more layer? I know you would have to do another waiver rewrite, but
I think, Karen, you know, I will just answer with that. We're continuing to review feedback. I know because I've seen it, we've received comment, around that matter. So again, that's part of the public comment period and kind of analysis as we think about the proposed waiver amendments.
okay.
And I'm going to, unless there's anything pressing, I'm going to yield the floor to Christina, who has an incredible presentation for us.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, Christina, we'll turn it over to you, and I'll try to my tech skills at your slides.
All right. There, I am seeing like I must be seeing like your other, there we go. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. That was a lot of information that Kelly and Cora and Kathy presented to you. We're going to continue to talk about kids, but those that are part of first steps in early intervention. Want to build off the presentation that I provided you in October of last year, kind of talking about the strategies that we're putting in place to build capacity. Also just update you on our Bureau priorities for 2024, give you an update on how we performed for our annual performance report, and kind of end with an invitation to anyone here who'd like to sponsor the First Steps Conference or be a part of it. So a little lighter topic, but certainly welcome. You're welcome to ask me any questions as we go along. Jessica, I'm seeing kind of a window on a window. There we go, a little bit more. There we go. All right, so in 2024,
I was doing so well, Christina, doing so well, but
that's quite all right, no worries. So at the end of 2023, my team came together and we kind of looked at what are our priorities for 2024. We have 3 distinct areas within our Bureau of Child Development Services. We have a policy division, we have a training and outreach division, and we have a quality assurance division. And so I'm just going to update you a little bit on where we are with priorities in those specific spaces. So as it pertains to policy, we're really working to update and make sure that everything is up to date and meaningful for our stakeholders, really working on transparency and alignment with memos that have gone out in the past. And all of this is also helping us prepare for our federal monitoring as well. But we've really been working on comprehensive policy manual outline and a table of contents. We have a policy manual that is posted on our public website, but really over the course of the last 7 years, we've added a variety of memos or policies pertaining to, for instance, makeup sessions for providers and those kinds of things that are not currently part of that policy manual that's posted online. So we know that there's some gaps, and we're working to make that more friendly to those who are really trying to do their best to implement early intervention in Indiana under IDEA Part C. So we're kind of going through that federally, those federal policies and our state policies, making sure that there's alignment there. What do we have versus what do we need? We are preparing for our federal monitoring through work groups and technical assistance. And we also hired a family engagement manager just over a year ago, and we've really been working on what would meaningful family engagement be through connections with families receiving services through early intervention. We are working on kicking off a quarterly meeting with families. Hopefully the first meeting will be at the beginning of April of this year, and really wanting to just connect with families. I will be attending that meeting, our policy director and our family engagement manager, really to provide some programmatic updates, as well as provide families a space to give us feedback so we can ensure that we are evolving the program to meet their needs, and just to hear from them about things that we could be doing better, or things that are going great and please don't change this. In our training area, we have been working really hard with our partners at the Early Childhood Center on updating our service coordinator onboarding modules. We hope that those will be finalized and posted by the end of the fiscal year, so June 30 of this year. We are also looking at further development of additional modules for providers. So really trying to focus on that in-service training. What do you need to be successful in delivering high quality early intervention services to children and their families? We're doing this through a lens of family guided routines-based intervention. I've told you before that that's a coaching model that we're implementing within our program, and really helping us to identify family priorities, family routines, and guiding families to learning the therapeutic strategies that their therapists are bringing to them during their therapy sessions, really having the family be the driver of those services that they receive through our program. And then we're also working on implementing a tiered technical assistance through the Early Childhood Center as well. So that is providing technical assistance to our provider agencies and our systems point of entry. So all of those local programs have an entity to go to, kind of as subject matter experts, to help them navigate challenges that they're currently experiencing. Modeling this after kind of the technical assistance that our program receives, or our bureau receives, from our national technical assistance centers. For instance, the Early Childhood Personnel Center, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, our Fiscal Center. So really trying to provide quality technical assistance to these programs so they can help navigate these pressing issues. Most recently, that pressing issue is children waiting for entitlement services. So how do we as provider agencies improve our capacity to deliver these critical services for children and families that they are entitled to as written on their IFSPs? So that is that's something that's coming and that will evolve over the course of the next year or so. Next slide, please, Jessica. Our Division of Quality Assurance has been laser focused on our Early Intervention Hub, or EI Hub. That is our statewide data system. We went live with that system in March of 2021, and we are still working to stabilize that system and make it as user-friendly as possible. We have been really trying to improve user experience, really trying to streamline those business processes to create efficiencies where we can. And it has the potential to introduce, I apparently dropped off a sentence there, but really just focused on how do we improve the business processes that service coordinators and our providers are required to do through our program policies, and utilize this technology to really help them in their work. And then also to have some vendor accountability here as well, with the vendor who is delivering the statewide data system with us to make sure that we're getting the product that we're supposed to as it contains in our contract with them. So we'll be working on that through the course of the next year. We have some really nice strategies in place there, and fingers crossed that we realize those goals. We're also, as a collective in the Bureau, just really working on capacity building. We have ongoing recruitment and retention efforts. As I mentioned in October, we've been working with a marketing firm to really help us with some social media, to really put the word out about recruitment. I hear that that has been effective with our provider agencies and the number of personnel that they're able to hire. We also brought in 5 new provider agencies in 2023. I'm happy to report that those agencies seem to be thriving. They've been able to hire new personnel that have not been in early intervention before. So we're not just moving and shifting personnel from agency to agency, but we're actually growing our capacity. And we're improving. While I'm going to have some slides on our annual performance report, it's not going to look like we've improved compliance around timely IFSP and timely start of services. But through our next year's data that we will be reporting, we also feel like that is going to demonstrate that improved compliance. So we'll talk through that when I get to that slide. So next slide, please, Jessica. All right, so we do have our federal monitoring coming up. I bring this to this council because you are a stakeholder in the work that we do within our Bureau and implementing early intervention services in Indiana. Our OSEP engagement, OSEP stands for the Office of Special Education Programs. It's under the U.S. Department of Education. Our engagement with them starts this year in 2024, actually next month in March, which is just a week or 2 away. They'll begin their document request from us. So we need to provide them evidence and documentation of how do we know that we've implemented a reasonably designed early intervention system in Indiana. They will be on site visiting us August 19th through the 21st. And then we'll receive a findings letter about 180 days from their on-site. I'm going to say about because we have peers who have already gone through this federal monitoring process and it's past 180 days and they still have not received their findings letters. But we have had several other states go through this federal monitoring. This is new for OSEP. They've revised their process of monitoring programs. It is very comprehensive. They're looking at all areas of our system. And it has been a tremendous amount of work for our team to get everything written down, documented, and collect all of the evidence that we have and that we know of to help support our design of our system and how we're implementing it, how we're monitoring our providers and agencies, how we are ensuring fiscal responsibility and payer of last resort. I went through those slides with you in October, as well in our funding streams and how those monies flow in and out of our program, and how we as a state kind of pool those resources together in order to best support the services that we deliver to children and families. So we hope that while this has been a tremendous amount of work, that we will have set up whoever comes after our staff here in BCDS in nice succession planning. We have all things internal processes written down, and hopefully we'll get a thumbs up from OSEP and a pat on the back, and even be highlighted. Indiana is doing some really amazing work in this space, and we should all be proud of the services that we do deliver on a daily basis to children and families. So hopefully we get highlighted in that way as well. But we know that there are some things and opportunities that will be brought to our attention through this findings letter. And we'll have an opportunity to just, again, continue our transformation of this system and make things even better than they are today. There will be stakeholder participation as part of this monitoring. They may do some calls to individuals, as well as you may be called to be invited on our on-site visit as well. And then we hope that our stakeholders will kind of help us reflect on the findings letter that we receive and provide some recommendations to us based on those findings on how we can continue to improve our system for infants and toddlers and their families. So next slide. I want to give you an update. Since October, we were talking about capacity building, and I provided you with some personnel data and looking at trends and point in time. This was some data that we pulled for our marketing vendor. We really wanted to know, are the efforts that we're putting into this work fruitful? Are they working? Are we actually building capacity through these efforts? Now, I'm not going to say that the growth in our capacity is due to our work with this vendor. It's really the result of all of the work. We are a collective in this work and trying to build this capacity. It's our SPOs, our systems point of entry, and their local planning and coordinating councils, and their involvement with colleges and universities and associations to help pull new individuals into service delivery. It's our outreach director, Constance Young, and her ability to never meet a stranger and pass out her business cards and constantly thinking of new ways that we can connect with potential service providers. And it's credit to our provider agencies. You know, they have really been a partner in this work in figuring out how do we expand our businesses to pull more individuals in? How do we host more interviews? How are we looking for high quality people? Can we do internships? Are we working with high school students? Those kinds of things. So this is a really, this is credit to everyone in our system. And I hope that we will continue to kind of see this growth over time. So from May 1st of 2023 through July 31st of 2023. I know that seems like a weird time frame to look at, but the reason was strategic. We didn't start our engagement with the marketing vendor who was doing paid media until August of 2023. So we wanted to look at 3 months prior and 3 months during that engagement with them. So from May 1st through July 31st, we had 252 unique active providers enrolled in First Steps as service coordinators. And then from August 1st through October 31st, we had 256. So, not a huge growth in service coordinators, but we also rewrote contracts with our systems point of entry, and they created new positions. And to my knowledge, these systems point of entry at this date are fully staffed. The goal of those new contracts were to increase the number of service coordinators and decrease caseloads of these service coordinators. We're going to have to continuously look at this over time to see if more positions are necessary in order to maintain that level of caseload for these individuals. From May 1st to July 31st, we had 1,811 unique active providers enrolled in First Steps. So those are your OTs, your PTs, your speech therapists, your developmental therapists, nutritionists, etc. And then in August, we had 1,852 unique providers enrolled in First Steps. That's great. We've seen an increase during those months. Here's what I think is the most telling data is really not just the number of individuals that are enrolled in our system, but are they delivering more hours of service to our children and families. So from May 1st to July 31st, we had 1,614 unique providers billing for services. And then from August to October, we had 1,708. So that is an increase in the number of unique providers billing for services. And then what's even more telling is the number of hours they're delivering. So from May 1st to July 31st, we had 177,085 hours. And August to October, we had 188,776 hours. That's incredible. So our capacity in just those 6 months grew, and what that means is that we were able to get services to infants and toddlers at a greater increase than we had previously. So I hope that we'll continue. We will continue to monitor this. My hope is that we'll continue to see this grow, and that the number of part-time providers or individuals delivering maybe a couple hours of service per week, they continue to grow their caseloads and see more and more children and deliver more hours to children. So it's not necessarily getting more providers, but really asking the providers who are enrolled with us to see more children or do more, because we know that our workforce is majority of them are part-time providers. Are there any questions about that? Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I need us to kind of go back in time. Our federal data is in arrear, and this data is not going to look great. But I also want you to look, the federal fiscal year of 2022 started July of 2022. So July of 22, what were we doing? July, August, September, that's when we were running around with our hair on fire, raising red flags, saying we have more children waiting for services than we ever have before. And I remind you, early intervention through IDEA Part C is an entitlement program, right? So those children come to us or referred to us. We have, these are supposed to be 100% in our indicators. So in July of 22, we were only meeting timely start of services, which means a child has an individualized family service plan, and we started or initiated the services written on their plan within 30 days of the date of that plan. So this tells us we didn't have enough personnel to deliver the services that were identified that children needed and were written on their plans. So again, our target is 100%. Our performance is 64.98%. This is prior to all of these strategies that we put in place. Our agencies started hiring more. We put in a rate increase in January 1 of 2023. So I think the true tell of whether or not these strategies have worked is when we pull FFY23 and we come back to you and we report that data to you. We hope to have that data pulled very shortly, and my fingers are crossed for very good news. Next slide, please. So this is also kind of same story in July, August, September. Not only were we raising the red flag that we don't have enough providers, we were raising a red flag saying our service coordinators have caseloads that are extraordinarily high. And when they have so many children on their caseloads, the timeliness that they're able to get all of their required documentation and meeting requirements completed diminishes. And I think you can see that here in 21 and 22 where it decreased. Again, that target, we are supposed to be 100% compliant for all children needing an IFSP, that we hold that IFSP meeting within 45 days of their referral. So not their evaluation, but of their referral. And then we have another 30 days to start those services that are written on that plan. So great news was in January of 2023, we were able to increase the allocation for those systems point of entry who hire our service coordinators, and they were able to add new positions for those service coordination positions. In July of 2023, we increased those allocations again through our RFP process, and we increased the number of service coordination positions. And if you go back to where I was talking earlier, we have increased the number of service coordinators. And again, for our federal fiscal year 23, our hope is that we are much closer to that 100% target and that we are getting those IFSPs written within that 45-day timeline. This, to me, this indicator 7 is going to be easier to achieve than that indicator 1 in providing timely services to children and families. So those services that are written on that plan. And so I know that our systems point of entry have been working with their evaluation and assessment teams, that they are implementing virtual evaluations. They are utilizing all of the tools that they have at their fingertips in order to make this more timely for families. I mean, I just think about a family coming home with a brand new baby and needing, with Down syndrome and needing an evaluation, and to wait 75 days, right? So 45 days plus that 30 for services to be in their home. That is an extraordinarily long period of time for an infant and for a family who is just really needing that support from us to help get them going, and helping their baby eat or increase their muscle strength, those kinds of things. So just to try to put that in a little bit of perspective. So we know that this is extraordinarily important, and that capacity building work that we're doing will be a direct reflection of these two indicators and this data that we're presenting to you. So again, the hope is that our federal fiscal year 23 data goes up, and we continue to see the fruits of all of those strategies. Any questions regarding this?
Christina, I have a question. I saw that there was an increase in service coordinators, which as an old service coordinator made my heart happy, right? I think if the slide went by, but I think it looked like there were like 4 that were added in the fall. Was that the only number of open positions, or were there more open positions and 4 were all that were filled?
My information from our systems point of entry are that all positions are full at this time.
Okay.
What you're not seeing is January through May,
right,
where we were able to add probably 6 to 10 more service coordinators before you got to that data.
okay, that makes sense, because 4 is great, but when I look across the state, I'm thinking,
Yeah. Yeah, well, where
how
are they, right?
really alleviate that caseload? Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say anecdotally, we are hearing that this rate increase and the contract allocation increase, increased staffing, it's working. Our biggest system point of entry, which is Central Indiana, had a 22% turnover rate in 2022. So that's where this data is. And in 2023, it fell to 4%. So that is great news. They had 0 turnover on their assessment team, which is fantastic. And, you know, we haven't really seen where rate increases and salary increases have had that dramatic effect. What that tells us is that the service coordination rate specifically was extraordinarily low. And the increase in salary was life-changing for those professionals, and they were able to stay in those jobs. All right, so next slide, please. All right, and I just want to give you some national data too on how our programs are growing and where we fall as compared to our peer states across the country. This is based on agency where the early intervention program sits. Obviously, we're in the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, so we're in other state agencies, and we are serving. This is looking at our one-day count of. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look at another slide here just so I can of all children birth to 3. So this is all children in our program. So we are serving 5.93% of all infants and toddlers and children in the state of Indiana are receiving early intervention. New Mexico's serving 11.2%. To put this also in perspective, we all have different eligibility criteria. So we are kind of in the middle. We're not an at-risk state. We are not a birth mandate state in terms of early intervention. And so, but we are doing a great job, and we've only moved up this ladder over the course of the last 7 years. So this is also a reflection of our child find activities that we've been doing, our outreach, our building of relationships with our referral sources, and we're making those connections with infants, toddlers, and their families sooner. So next slide. And this is based on eligibility. So as I told you before, we're in that middle category. So these categories, as you read here, are not exactly where Indiana is. I have to make a guess as to kind of where I feel like we best fit. I choose category B. And so we are doing an amazing job in this space as well. So I think we should all be proud of the reputation of First Steps, getting the word out. We're helping families find us sooner, and we're making that impact on that child and family. So next slide. Also want to give you just some national child count trend. I think I've also provided you some information back in October about the growth of our program over the course of the last 7 years. I mean, I think it's grown like 22%. But if you look nationally, we're also, I mean, the programs across the country are just growing. We're seeing a larger number of children find our programs. The green is birth through 1, so that 0 to 12 months of age. The blue line is all children in early intervention, 0 to 3. So again, just continuing to grow. That dip in 2020 is obviously due to the pandemic. So next slide, please. And this is our Indiana child count trend. So as I mean, it just continues to just grow and grow and grow. And we're making our way back up in finding the number of children under the age of 1. Our goal right now in terms of child find is to find children as early as possible. We can have the biggest influence on their brain development and their growth and learning if we, the sooner we find children. So, and we can get them connected with our critical early intervention services. Next slide. And we are also, just want to put into perspective, from a national perspective, we're not the only state that is working on growing their capacity and having provider shortages. This is happening across the country. I complete this survey for our Infant, Toddler, and Coordinators Association annually. This past year, for 2023, I reported that we had a shortage of every service provider type, because I mean, we do. If you look at the number of social workers enrolled, if you look at the number of psychologists enrolled and the number of children that are needing those services, you know, we really just don't have the number of service providers to meet that need. I think I also talked about, this is not just a rate issue. This is a relationship with higher education. This is a, hey, colleges and universities, we need more physical therapists. We need more speech therapists. We need a more diverse workforce. We need providers who look like families who are accessing our services. So this is going to be an ongoing relationship and an ongoing process as we work with these institutions to grow those programs and to grow access. For individuals who are interested in these careers. And we're working to partner with our other agencies that are also have shortages of these same professionals. You all are looking for these same professionals to provide services to older individuals as well. And so how can we work together to build our workforce at the same time, rather than having this push-pull of moving them from one space to another? So again, that's a larger and broader issue, but we'll have to be working on this all together. Next slide, please. I think we were going to talk about data analytics today, so I just wanted to sneak a slide in here about some of the things that we'll be doing in the Bureau of Child Development Services around data analytics. We just received all of our data tables from our data system vendor, and so we're exploring those data tables. What do they look like on the back end? We've not had anybody embedded in our bureau or division that's been able to really help us in that space. And we're partnering with FSSA's data analytics team here as well. We're going to complete an analysis of what our data quality looks like. Where do we need to work with our systems point of entry and our providers and service coordinators to ensure that all of the data elements that we need to provide high quality information and to make programmatic changes and use data as the driver of our change, we got to work on the quality and completeness of the data as well. So we'll be working on that. We need to identify and create a couple data dashboards. We're hoping that what that will look like is our profile reports that used to be on our state website, that we can make those kind of more interactive and engaging to stakeholders. So Our goal is to work on that this year. We're also going to be working on a set of reports that can be auto-created for our local program use. For example, getting a list of children who are potentially eligible for early childhood special education services through the school system. And we're going to be collaborating with our new DDRS data analyst on division data reporting as well. So super excited to have Katie on board and create that partnership and figure out like how does the data that we have in the Bureau of Child Development Services across the lifespan kind of look at that data across the division as well. So super excited to see what that looks like and to be a partner in that work. And then I have one last slide for you, and this is our shameless plug about our early intervention conference that's held in June. It's June 13 and 14. I neglected to include that important information. Some key highlights include our keynote speakers, June Lee. He's spoken at one of our virtual conferences before. We're excited to have him in person in Bloomington, and Tamar Jacobson as well. We have several pre-conference sessions with our family guided routines-based intervention fast track, high quality outcomes training for service coordinators. So how do you take the family as the driver of their services and translate that into high quality outcomes related to their routines and put those on their IFSP for their service providers to assist them with. And then we also have with our partners at Infancy Onward, an infant and early childhood mental health reflective supervision and consultation session. And there will be both in-person and many virtual attendance options. I have put our conference website link here, and
Christina, I put that in the chat too, just FYI.
And if you're interested in being a sponsor or an exhibitor of the conference, you can go to that website and there are instructions on what to do from there. But thank you so much for allowing me to come today and provide you with this information, and hope to see you in June.
Thanks, Christina. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I think I was having some issues for a second. I did put the link for the conference in the chat, along with the dates too, just in case people want to check it out. And Kate, real quick, there weren't any questions, but Kate Barrow had said the councils can't provide sponsorships, however, they can do exhibit tables. So just FYI for you, in case you didn't see that.
I'll reach out to Kate directly.
Okay. Let me make sure. I don't think I saw anything else. Okay. We're running short on time, which is okay. So I think I'm going to, you guys have the slides and everything, and they'll be posted, and sent to you. So I'm going to I want Sean to have a second and give him sort of most of the rest of the time. And then I'll kind of maybe fly through, just highlight a couple of the rest of the slides, and we can pick back up in April. And so Sean, I don't have a slide, which is totally fine. I was just going to give you kind of the floor, if you don't mind sharing. We go to a lot of conferences, as you guys know, and there's so much great information. I think it's nice to highlight those conferences and things that maybe you learned or you picked up, or resources that you want to share with the council as well as the public. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, turn it over to you, and I can follow the chat for you in case anyone has questions.
Actually, I'm going to bring in Noah also, because he was there.
Oh, great.
with
Yep.
So
yeah, no worries.
So it was me, Kim, Steve, and Noah that we did a session on our advocacy fellows. Noah, you want to go ahead and say some things?
Yeah, so we had a panel talking about the Advocacy Leadership Network. And we were I was really happy with the amount of questions asked and how other states were wanting to replicate what we were doing with the Leadership Network. It was a really cool panel.
Yeah, I would say we had probably about a handful of people come up to Kim and Andy wanting to learn about how we started the advocacy fellows, and they wanted to try and do it in their states. So that was actually really cool that other states want to do something after Indiana. And I think there was a lady, Noah, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think there was a lady that told us that in their state, it's a waiver service.
Yes.
Was I right on that?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. I was hoping I got that right because I couldn't remember all of that.
Hey, Sean, what was the waiver service when you mentioned that? Like, what did she mean was the waiver service? Do you remember?
I think that's all she said.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So
I think it was the
thought
peer-to-peer, wasn't it? The peer-to-peer
Oh.
being a waiver service.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, guess what? We have some IPP projects on that, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
Got it.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry, I forgot about some of
No,
the
you're
stuff.
fine.
It's
It was
been
a while ago.
since yeah. And then Noah, do you want to say what you learned from what being there at the conference? Since it was your first one?
So yeah, there was a lot of really interesting breakout sessions. One that I really found interesting was about intersectionality between the LGBT community and the disability community, kind of talking about the way those communities intersect and how we can bridge those communities together. That was one of my big takeaways from the conference. And beyond that, just getting to meet all these people from these wonderful states and hearing about what they were doing. It was just a really enlightening experience.
Yeah, and then after that, after our session was over, I am also on the National Council of Self-Advocates through the ARC-US. And so I was the second half of that symposium that they have. I was the leader of the symposium for that second part. And so one of the people that was talking was from Texas. And the lady, it was astounding to me that they have a waiting list of over 20,000 people. And that she actually said people has died waiting to get on the waiver. And that was like an eye-opening thing for me, because that's just really ridiculous that people are dying to wait to get on to a waiver. And I'm glad Indiana's not like that, because that should be something that should not ever happen in no matter what state. But that was like the most eye-opening thing that I learned at that conference was that. But Kim, do you want to say anything about the conference and about our session?
I think overall, the conference had about 800 attendees, which was really good. The highest percentage of attendees were self-advocates, which was really nice to see. I think I'll give all of the credit to Noah and Sean about our session getting such high praise. They did an exceptional job talking about not only the importance of being advocates in your own lives, but also the importance of that peer-to-peer network. And it really resonated with a lot of people. So we appreciate the partnership we have with DDRS and making all of that possible, because it absolutely is having an impact. I think overall, all of the conversations at the conference was really good. And Sean and Noah were very good at just speaking up and sharing what was happening in Indiana, and taking away from that kind of, again, what self-advocates could be doing to promoting some of the issues being discussed. And so I think Karen put it in there. Indiana was very well represented, and that's all thanks to Noah and Sean.
Yeah, that's awesome, Kim. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Sean, she just said that was the most attended session, you and Noah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how many people were in ours.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And actually,
well, if you guys have any materials too, Sean, please send them to me. And if there's any PowerPoint, anything that you think would be helpful for us, please feel free to send them and I can share them with the group too, especially around the peer supports things. And I put Self-Advocate National Conference. I meant to put, because it's the ARC, Kim, right? It's the ARC National Conference.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I just realized that slide is not accurate. I mean, it's self-advocate led, but I didn't call that correctly.
And I will just have to say that it was an added plus because it was in a city that I've always wanted to go to in New Orleans. So
I don't want to know, Sean, what you do in New Orleans stays in New Orleans. So don't talk about it on.
No, I was good. I was good.
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Sean, too, or Noah? I don't want to cut you off.
Noah, do you have anything else?
Nothing else that I can think of. Just to reiterate, it was a really amazing experience that I'll cherish forever.
Yeah, and
you
we're
gotta try
actually
to live up to the next year. You got to try to live up to your session for next year.
Right. Yeah. I'm just so glad that the next one is like next door to us in Ohio, in Columbus. So.
Not as fun, but easier to get to. So
it is what
that's
it
awesome,
is.
Kim, that there's so many self-advocates too. That's awesome. That
yeah, I will say that's not the one before, the couple before COVID. There was not very many self-advocates, but there was a lot at this one.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate just your time and sharing your experience. And like I said, anything else that you have that maybe you think would be helpful for us, yeah, feel free to share. I'm always, especially what other states are doing, that we can continue to look at and improve here. So awesome. Okay. Well, of course we're running behind, but that's okay. I'm going to save some of this. It kind of worked out with the bylaws. So I did send the council. We have bylaws, the DDRS Advisory Council has bylaws that have not been updated since, I think it was 2011, which is a long time ago. So we are looking to update those a lot. Some of it is just making sure it's in line with the current legislation, that was passed not too long ago. And some of it is just, it's not even accurate anymore. It doesn't exist. And so if you guys want to take a look at that draft that I sent around this morning, we can talk about it at the next meeting. Feel free. You can also send me ideas, thoughts. It's very red line. So just be prepared, mainly just because there was a lot of it is edits just that need to be, changed, but some of it is content related. So if you don't mind, take a look at it and then we can have some discussion next time around that, and get your thoughts and feedback on maybe some things that we're missing, or things that, we want to edit, etc. So if you could do that, that would be wonderful. I'm going to turn over to Kyle really quick just to give a transformation update, grant update from him. If you don't mind, Kyle, just sharing really quickly.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that we are about halfway through the review of the proposals that we anticipate receiving. We completed the review and sent out approvals on 16 of those transformation grant submissions. We've got another 11 or so currently in review, and then just a handful of providers that are still pulling together documentation for their full proposal submissions. We anticipate in total providing about $11.3 million in grants to these 32 providers, and already we've approved around 5.5 million for those 16 full proposals. We'll have more to share later. I know we're getting close to the end of time. We'll have a little more to share next time we meet about some of the activities, really some of the novel approaches some of these providers are taking with this grant funding. But I wanted to give just a brief update on where we are with getting those approvals out the door. Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle. I'm going to go really fast, so close your eyes. I just want to highlight, and again, we'll do this next time, so I don't have time, but just real quickly, a couple next steps for the IPP projects. We are continuing virtual and in-person visits. We're actually probably today on Facebook, each of the grantees is creating a short video about their project and some of the successes I'm a visual person. And so instead of someone just, me just writing something or them writing something and putting it on Facebook, they're creating some videos, again, 2 to 3 minutes about the project. So look for those on Facebook. We are planning a next in-person IPP summit. No date yet set on that, but stay tuned. And then we're really starting to get into the evaluation process with the grants and really looking at how that is informing the future of HCBS, the HCBS waiver services. Again, tons more information to come. I don't have time to get into too much of the weeds, but I just wanted to share next steps and also where to look for updates. Follow us on Facebook, on the Beats Facebook page. We share tons of information. I share things with Kim and NRF as well, and Katie, just to get out to their network of some of the opportunities. Visit our page here as well. I can put, I don't have time to put them in the chat. That's okay. You guys have these and we're constantly putting these out. And then if you have questions, thoughts, whatever you're seeing, please email me. I mean, you can email me directly, but you can also email the Beats help as well. As you know, we monitor that constantly every day. So we're always want to hear from you and get your thoughts and feedback. The schedule, as a reminder, we do not meet in March. Happy spring break. Sean can take another trip to New Orleans or someone else fun. And we will meet in person. So in April is our first in person of the year. I'm excited because that's my favorite. On April 17th, BRS will be in attendance to give their update here at the Government Center. So I talk very fast. So, but again, we're always here. If you guys have thoughts, apologies for running over. That was probably my fault trying to pack too much into a 2-hour period, but always willing to hear from you guys and feedback, and we will see you in person in April. I don't think there's any more comments or chats. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a good start to your spring.